Hello, Rebecca. Thank you for joining me on the DNA Fat Loss podcast. So, do you want to introduce yourself briefly for the listeners?
Yes, thanks. Thanks for having me, Alex. I'm delighted to be here and talking to you today. So my name is Rebecca Heald. My business is Transformational Nutrition. I am an evidence-based nutrition coach, and I work very much on behaviour change and helping people to improve and change their relationship with food and their body.
Amazing, amazing. Change their relationship with food and their body. So, I would love to hear, and I'm sure the listeners would as well. How did you get into that? What's your story?
Yeah, okay. So this will probably take up the whole of the podcast. So I didn't start out as a nutrition coach. I actually started as a secondary school teacher. So did that for 15 years. And then when I had my second son, having said that, health, nutrition, fitness has always been a huge part of my life. So when I had my second son, I really wanted to set up my own business. And obviously nutrition was the obvious choice. So I went back and I studied and retrained. And my training was very heavily evidence-based. Okay, so lots of scientific theory, etc., as I'm sure you'd understand. Obviously behavior change in there as well, because that's really, really important when you're working with clients. So when I first set up my business, I was probably more focused on the weight loss side of things, on the fat loss side of things. But I think probably a couple of years into it, I kind of was questioning the approaches that I was taking. Now, the work I was doing was fantastic. I was getting really, really good results with clients, but I was tending to do shorter programs that maybe weren't affecting the permanent long-term change that I wanted to help clients with. So lots of my clients, not all of them, but a lot of them were coming to me with diet mentality, really been stuck and ingrained in diet culture. And this is something that really resonated with me because earlier in my late teens and my 20s, I really struggled myself. I was quite poorly with an eating disorder, and it took me, probably the whole of my kind of 20s to get over that. So obviously that experience kind of drove where it is that I wanted to go with my business. Yeah. So not saying that I necessarily wanted to work with people or do work with people that potentially had, issues that were as severe as mine, but recognizing how that can be triggered, I think, and trying to avoid that and helping people to just kind of, live their lives to the full. Often I'm working with people that have got, are really missing out on the best part of their life because they're adhering to strict and rigid diet rules, because that's what, society and social media have told them they need to do. So I try and get them to kind of, basically I'm changing their paradigm, really, their belief system, their thought system, so that they can be less stressed around food and take the emphasis off the kind of the fat loss and back onto the habits and the behaviors that they need to be developing in order to get to where they want to be.
Wow, amazing. I think that's one of the reasons I jumped to asking you to be on the podcast, was because I've been following your stuff for a little while, and through all your posts, your videos, your own podcasts and videos and stuff that you do, clearly your message is so aligned to my way of working and my belief as well. So I can completely empathize there, because I worked in e-commerce selling weight loss shakes and short-term diets, right? 800 calorie, 600 calorie, even at times. 1200 calorie was like the high calorie one, diet plans. And as you say, people lose weight. It works. I'm using air quotations there. It works in the short term, but long term, they're not changing their behaviors, they're not changing their habits, and therefore what happens? They gain it all back.
One thing I say, because I do work with, a lot of the people that I work with, they're business owners, they're leaders, they're under quite a lot of pressure. And I think that plays a huge part in it as well, because they're so super in control of things professionally that they can't work out why they can't master that with their nutrition. And it's funny, because I always say to them, if you had a supplier who kept letting you down, if you had a supplier that every time you ordered something, it broke, would you keep going to that same supplier? So, when you keep trying these diets that in the end fail you, why do you keep going back? It's like if you bought a dress and the zip kept breaking, would you keep going back and getting the same dress? No, you wouldn't. So, but this this, you know, the fad diet industry, the quick fix, it's the best recurring business model, because it's the only business model where you blame yourself when it doesn't work.
It's genius, isn't it? It is genius. Yes. Retention rate, you just keep coming back, you lose weight, you get it all back, you purchase again.
People think that because it worked in the short term, it worked, but actually, as you and I know, it only works if it lasts long term.
Yeah, and then I guess arguably the worst, well, one of the worst sides, I guess, the poor relationship with food is one of the poor outcomes, but the rebound is often outweighs the initial weight loss. So your trajectory over time is actually increasing weight as you spend half your life dieting, which is...
And that's all, yeah, and that all comes down to the fact that your body and your mind, it's all about body mind congruence, you know. And the reason that happens is because your body, you lose trust in your body. So your body then, you know, it begins to higher your set point, because it's, you know, it no longer trusts you to feed it and nourish it and make sure that it's being sustained. So, you know, when you think about it, it makes perfect sense. Evolutionary wise, you know, in the past, our ancestors would go long periods without eating, and that's what our bodies still believe, that if you don't feed it, you're going to, you know, you're not going to feed it, and there's going to be a long period without food. So it kind of, you know, it goes into that kind of panic mode, doesn't it, of, you know, when's she going to feed me again? So that trust is kind of eroded, isn't it, over time with diets, which is why we see this happening. You know, weight cycling, you know, is so common when it comes to, you know, dieting.
Absolutely. What would you say is the most powerful change that you have made to your health? Or sort of maybe the pivotal moment or the pivotal change that led you to kind of be where you are now and teach what you're teaching now?
Yeah, I mean, there've been some quite, you know, obviously one of the most powerful things for me was to let go of that diet culture. But, you know, and that completely changed my mental health, my physical health for the better. However, I'd say, you know, kind of probably the most powerful thing I did was letting go of a huge energy source that just wasn't serving me. Okay. And, you know, I think this again is what I often see with the clients that I work with. One of the first things that I often work through with clients is letting go of that diet mentality, because it is just such a huge drain on your energy. And, you know, once you can let go of that, you can then begin to focus on what it really is that makes you happy, because fundamentally that's what it's all about, you know. And if you're not happy, if things in your life are draining your energy, then you're never going to be able to stick to any nutrition plan. You're never going to be able to, you know, de-stress in the way that you need to. So for me, it was, you know, it really was kind of moving on and letting go of, you know, what wasn't serving me.
Amazing, brilliant. And you talk a lot about two elements of eating, if I understand correctly. So there's the physical element, so to satisfy the physical need, and then the emotional element too. Do you mind talking a little bit about that? Because I think that carries on quite nicely from what you just said.
Yeah, sure. So we do eat. I think, you know, people that have a healthy relationship with food, we eat for two reasons, okay? We don't just eat for physical satisfaction, we also eat for emotional satisfaction. So emotional, you know, satiation is all about meeting your physical needs as well as your emotional needs. We don't just eat, like I said, yes, of course we do eat to make sure that we're fueled properly, to make sure that we've got enough energy, etc. But we also eat for enjoyment, for pleasure. Very often what happens is that diet culture, basically it gets you to focus, I guess, on making sure that you are, you know, sticking to these rules that take away all of that emotional satisfaction, and they make you feel stressed. And you cannot enjoy food if you're feeling stressed or you're feeling bad about what you're eating, which means then that you're not going to get the emotional pleasure and the emotional enjoyment from it, which then means that your body is going to crave that food later on. It's going to crave some satisfaction, because, you know, fundamentally, if we do not eat, okay, we're not going to survive. Okay, so, you know, food is rewarding. It's supposed to be enjoyable. It's a huge part of, you know, our social functioning, our emotional functioning. You know, it goes way beyond just, you know, being something that kind of, you know, keeps you alive, if that's the best way of explaining it.
Absolutely. And I'm half Italian. Are you half Italian as well? Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, my upbringing was heavily revolved around food, right? Every meal was a meal at the dinner table with the family. Celebrations and events were always food led. It sounds like your past was the same. You know, from an early age, it was always that emotional driving factor. It's not so much eating for the nutritionals. There was an element of that, and it was always sort of healthy kind of Mediterranean-ish kind of food. But there was so much. It brought people together. It was, oh, someone's coming over. Let's cook. Let's host them, and let's enjoy a really relaxed dinner, sit-down meals. It was never sat in front of the TV, for example. It was never like on the go eating. It was always, we've got an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, and we're just going to sit and kind of eat and chat.
And you know, and I think when you think about it, it's not necessarily, people talk obviously about the Mediterranean diet and how healthy it is, and yes, of course, you know, it's full of all, you know, of all the things that we should be focusing on, you know, lots of, you know, whole grains, legumes, fruit, lots of healthy fats, olive oils, etc., you know, some fish and meat. But I think when you think about it as well, it's not just about what they eat, it's how they eat, like you just said then. It's such an integral part of their lives, and it's something to enjoy. It's something that bonds families, that brings them together. And when you look at countries like the UK and the US, where we are experiencing, you know, much higher obesity rates, than Mediterranean countries, we are, you know, we're not following that, are we? We're so bound by diet rules, by diet culture. Diet culture is so heavily ingrained within our cultures, which you know, you don't see so much of in the Mediterranean countries, because, you know, it's almost like they are kind of, you know, immune to it, because it's like, well, this is the way we live our life, and this is how we're going to continue to live our life. And it's why, you know, it's really, really difficult for my family. And I spoke about this morning in my post, you know, about why it was so difficult for my family when I did. I mean, I got caught up in diet culture when I went away to university, you know, and to be honest with you, it was a diet that caused that. Now, there will have been other triggering factors, you know, there is never just one thing that does trigger, you know, what I went through, but the diet was the catalyst, you know. And then, you know, it drove me away from my family, and it was so isolating and so lonely. And I see this so often with my clients. They're not able to enjoy family meal times because they're always eating separate meals to their family. They feel stressed. They don't know what to focus on anymore. And like you said, sitting in front of the TV or sitting at one of the things, I did a workshop recently, and some of the most powerful feedback has been from people who have said, for the first time in my life, I've sat undistracted and enjoyed my food, and it made such a powerful difference. And it's just something so simple. But it's so lost in this culture of, we need to focus on what exactly we're eating and how much exactly we're eating, rather than stripping it back and actually listening to our own internal cues, you know, building trust again with our bodies. Once you do that, you'll make the progress that you know, will ultimately get you where you want to be.
Amazing. Such a great point. And you said there, the word isolation or isolated really stood out for me. So if you're, let's say, in air quotations, on a diet, eating something different from the rest of your family, then I guess you're not getting that emotional satisfaction from the food, because you're not having it with the rest of your family. There's not that bonding experience, and then you feel maybe like something's missing, and then you end up, that causes almost a domino effect, where you end up searching for that emotional trigger and satisfaction from other things, or maybe a pizza, or maybe 10 bags of crisps or something.
Well, it's where, you know, emotional eating, everybody, Alex, you know, the most, you know, people that have never dieted, people that have got the healthiest relationship with food, emotionally eat. Okay, we all emotionally eat. The problem is when people start to abuse emotional eating, and there is a strong correlation between restriction and emotional eating. So if somebody is restricting a certain food, then and this links with what I said to you before about how we don't just eat for physical enjoyment, we eat for emotional satisfaction as well. So if you are restricting foods that give you that emotional satisfaction, they're constantly going to be there. It's like if I said to you right now, don't think about a white bear, Alex. Yeah, close your eyes, don't think about a white bear. What do you see when you close your eyes? or white bear. So if you're telling yourself, if you love chocolate and you're saying, right, I can't eat chocolate, it's going to be there in the back of your mind. So then as soon as things, you know, as soon as you feel stressed, as soon as you feel, you know, things are out of control, what do? You know, you gravitate towards the chocolate because it's, you know, it's just there. And this is also where, you know, people often find that emotional eating is their only tool for dealing with things, because they have constantly got this restriction in the back of their mind. Once you work on this, you can, and also as well, make peace, you know, acknowledge the fact that food has gotten you through some pretty rotten times, and that's okay. You didn't know how else to deal with that. But now it's about, you know, I take my clients on a journey where they can then develop the tools to actually deal with that, deal with what's going on in other ways. Now, the thing is, and I see this all too often, people will often try to deal with emotional eating by just finding a different thing to do. And that's all well and good, but trust me, you know, no amount of baths you have will help you actually deal with it if you're not getting to the root cause of the problem. If you're not actually dealing with that diet mentality, if you're not actually allowing yourself unconditional permission to food, you're never really going to stop using emotional eating in an abusive way.
So powerful. Absolutely. So I think let's take this opportunity. I'd love to learn more about how, almost like a simplified step-by-step manner in which you work with clients. So let's say, I know Susan got on the phone with you and signed up to your program. What does that look like working with you for a period of time?
Obviously, every client journey is different. With that said, when clients work with me, it's a 6-month program, and it's a one-to-one coaching program. So now there are certain steps that I do take clients through. However, how they progress through those steps does depend on where they're at, and it's a little bit like fat loss, as you know, Alex. It's not like I take them on a journey like this. It's like this, yeah. So obviously, I've got, I suppose what you say, I've got the experience and I've got a toolkit that I use, but then I kind of weave that in with, you know, to meet the client at where they're at. So it's, you know, on a very practical level, I coach my clients. So we have regular coaching sessions, regular check-ins, and we work through everything that's going on for them. And it's really interesting, actually, because I had a conversation with a lady last night who's interested in working with me. She's, you know, I'm yet to know whether we're going to go ahead or not, because we just had the conversation last night. But I said to her, you know, through the coaching, obviously all the things that are underlying that you are struggling with will come out. And she said, it's really interesting. She says, because just talking to you this evening, I've already started to see, you know, all of the things that I need to work on. So coaching brings out all of the things that my clients are struggling with. Obviously there are common themes. So, you know, it could be that they are struggling to eat undistracted. It could be that they are completely disconnected with their hunger and fullness cues. Very often, kind of rejecting that diet mentality and working on allowing unconditional permission is one of the first things that we work on. But yeah, it basically, it depends on where the client are at. And it's about reframing. I help my clients to reframe their thoughts and reframe what I call their paradigm. So they probably come to me thinking that they need to go on another diet, and they think I'm going to give them another version of that diet, you know, to get them where they want to be. But actually I work on all of the other stuff, and I get them to see things from a different perspective. And this doesn't just mean making changes with their nutrition, it means making changes across everything in their life. So I look at stress management. I've had one client who's made a massive change in her career, because she realized through the work with me that she, you know, she said to me, I always thought it was me. I thought that, you know, it was me with a problem at work. She says, but because working with you has given me so much more confidence and trust in myself, I've realized that no, the job just wasn't satisfying me. And she said it was the best thing she ever did. She's going to do a video testimonial for me, actually, which is going to be amazing. So, you know, it's about, I take away that stress and that pressure that clients have been, you know, experiencing for so long, so they feel more relaxed around food. And then as a knock-on effect, if their body weight has been driven up, and they're sitting at a much higher weight than they need to be, then that will naturally fall back where it's supposed to.
Amazing. And with a culture of all these trainers having programs that are like, right, 8 weeks or 12 weeks, grind, here's your meal plan, here's your workouts, smash it out. Every day I'm going to call you and make sure you're motivated and driven, and 10 weeks in they burn out and they crash. And this is such a refreshing, completely different other side of the spectrum kind of program.
Yeah, and it's funny though, because I mean, part of my job with clients is to keep them motivated, but not in that way. You know, I don't micromanage my clients like, you know, a lot of coaches out there do, because it just doesn't work. You know, micromanagement, if anybody who's led a team out there or runs a business, we know that micromanagement is so exhausting, it's so draining, and you can't do it for very long. So why do we feel that micromanaging people's diets is going to be any different? It's mad, really, when you think about it. And the way that I give my clients confidence, which then, you know, obviously promotes motivation, and then the motivation, you know, equals results, is by showing them they can do it. You know, I show them that they can do it, and I give them the confidence to be able to do that way beyond the work that we're doing together, because I help them to develop the internal skills and tools to be able to manage things long term, so they don't feel that they've got to constantly come to me to tell them what they're eating or what they need to do in terms of movement. Obviously, we do look at all of those things, but it's about, you know, coaching and education.
Amazing. So is there one, let's say, exercise, by exercise I don't mean physical exercise, I mean like one activity that you would do with a client to help them, say, come in line with their internal hunger cues, that you could share and just dive a little bit around?
Yeah, sure. I can talk about, I want to kind of, I'll talk to you about I tend to use what we call a hunger and fullness scale. And it's something that, you know, is quite well known, I think, in the intuitive eating community. But one thing I will say is I don't often do this. It's not one of the first things I do with clients, because as you can imagine, when clients come to me, they are, you know, they're still struggling with that diet mentality. They still want rules. Yes, they need structure. And I do absolutely help them to build structure. I'm not saying that structure is not important. It is, but rules are not. Okay. And I think one of the reasons that I don't necessarily work on this hunger and fullness scale straight away is that people can kind of attach, they can let it become another diet. Does that make sense? So, okay, I'm only going to eat when I'm at a certain level on the hunger scale, or I'm going to, you know, and that in itself is not helpful. So the hunger and fullness scale is supposed to complement all of the other work that's going on. Does that make sense? But with that said, what I tend to talk to clients about is, you know, hunger and fullness being on a scale of 1 to 10. So hungry, number 1 would be absolutely starvingly hungry, and number 10 would be overly full stuffed. Okay. Now, clients often find that they are either at one end or the other end of the spectrum. So they're either absolutely starving themselves all the time and they're like a 1 or a 2, or they're literally stuffing themselves because they've restricted themselves so much and they're feeling sick and they're feeling guilty because they end up, you know, overeating, binging even, and ending up at a 9 or a 10. So it's about getting them to actually start to recognize gentle hunger. So beginning to honor their hunger as it starts to appear, rather than waiting until literally their biological hunger kicks in. Because what happens when your biological hunger kicks in, all of your rational thoughts go out of the window, because your body just wants food, it wants calories, because it's going to die if you don't give them. And it's much the same as when if you hold your breath underwater for too long, you don't just pop up and breathe gracefully, do you? You're gasping for air. And this is exactly what happens when, you know, you let your hunger go too far. And yeah, our bodies, as you know, Alex, our bodies thrive best in homeostasis. So they thrive best with balance. It's why we sweat. You know, we get too hot, our body wants to kind of cool us down and get us back to a normal temperature. It's why we shiver when we're cold, because again, you know, our body wants to get us back to a normal temperature. It's why we go to the toilet when we've, you know, drunk too much, because our body wants to regulate our fluid levels. And it's the same with our diets. Our body wants us to stay. It doesn't want us to be a number 10. It doesn't want us to be a number 1. It wants us to be, you know, level. And it's another reason why, you know, structure and routine is so important. So if you're eating erratically, you're eroding trust. Anyway, I've gone off on one a little bit here, haven't I? But it's about, you know, I work with clients to develop those self-awareness tools so that they can begin to honor their hunger, never let themselves go below a 3 or a 4, and likewise, never let themselves go beyond about a 7. Because if you're, you know, once your body is trusting you again, when you get to a comfortable fullness of around 7, 7 is, I'm happy, I've had enough, I could probably squeeze a little bit more in, but do you know what? I trust that you're going to feed me again in another 3 or 4 hours. So that's okay. We're okay here, because in another 3 hours, I'm going to be gently hungry and ready for you to feed me again. And that is when we enjoy food the most as well. When we're gently hungry, or and we also are going to feel satisfied and happy when we stop, when we're, just full enough. Does that? But like I said, it's not something I would go and do immediately with clients, because there's other stuff that they need to kind of work through, and they need to kind of be developing that trust with their body again to recognize where they are on that scale.
Amazing, absolutely. So yeah, I used a similar scale. Between 3 and 7 is the sort of sweet spot for me. But as you say, it's not something you can use straight away. You need to start to, I guess it's a self-awareness piece. If you have no idea what a 3 really is, because you've never experienced it, because you've always been at either a 1 or a 10, then it's not a very productive exercise. But then at a certain point, when you start to build that trust and stuff.
And like I said, it's about also when you're kind of letting go of the diet, when you're still in the early stages, it's difficult to get your head around the fact that that hunger scale doesn't just, it's not just about your physical hunger as well. It's about all of the other things that are going on. So, I think it's not an easy thing to kind of, it sounds quite straightforward, it sounds quite simple, but often people do need coaching to get them where they can literally use that as effectively and as productively as it is supposed to be used.
Yeah, and just talk about that, it triggers something. The term intuitive eating, I think it's thrown around as this kind of ideal, and as something to work towards. Intuitive eating is amazing, because you are in tune with your body, right? You're literally listening to your hunger and emotions and stuff. But as a tool, going from, say, very strict dieting to try and go to this other end of the spectrum, you have no natural, or very, very limited natural intuition. So there is no scale. It's a lot of it, for me, comes down to perfectionism and all or nothing thinking.
Right thinking is something, that's something every single client that comes to me has got black and white thinking when they come to me, but not by the end of it.
So it's breaking that 0 and 1 down to, okay, let's take it to 0 and 10, and there's all these steps in between, and suddenly it's like, hold on, I can do something that's not perfect, but that's slightly better, and I'm going to make progress. It's like, yes. If you do that every week, and then the next month you aim to go one more point along that scale, and that's where, it's changing that mentality, to say, that paradigm.
Cognitive flexibility comes in, and it's about that cognitive flexibility. That's what is the most powerful driver for change, really.
Right. I would love to ask, what is one common myth about nutrition, about dieting? And then we had a little chat about this before the call, that you would like to dispel.
Okay, so I mean, there are so many myths out there, it's unreal, and some really kind of antiquated ones as well that my clients come to me with, and I'm like, what? But I think the one that really, stands out for me is you don't need to count calories, okay? And this is the thing, people just think, well, it's, I think this idea of calories, calories are the only thing that matters is so grossly oversimplified. Now, yes, of course, thermodynamics is a real thing, and you will lose weight if you end up, consuming more calories, less calories than you burn. However, it's really, really not that straightforward. It's not that simple, and we are all very, very different. So, I think that's one of the biggest things. Clients come to me and they cannot get their head around the fact that they don't need to count calories and to lose weight and get where they want to be. That's not saying calories aren't important. They are. I'm not, they absolutely are. But your body is the best. You listen to your body, okay? And trust me, it's the best calorie counter you'll ever meet, I suppose. No external app is ever going to understand you like your own body does. And when you get back in tune with your body, it will regulate. When you've, how many times have you found, and this is the thing, okay, people tend to think, right, okay, over Christmas, we all overeat over Christmas. It's absolutely normal. You know, you are supposed to. If you haven't done Christmas properly. But what happens is that, you know, our bodies at the end of December, they go, oh, I've had enough now. Oh, I know, I'm going to go on a diet. No, your body's had enough. So if you just listen to your body is going to start regulating itself in January, okay? It will want to move a little bit more because you've eaten more calories than you need. It will want you to eat a little bit less because you've eaten more. And so over time, if you trust your body, if you've eaten too much, it will regulate. If you put on excess weight, it will come off. If you trust your body, you do not suddenly need to start counting calories, restricting sugar, you know, going the whole month dry January. You know, just trust your body. Don't give it a set of rules. Don't think you need to count calories to get back where you need to be. You know, and I think this, you know, the other thing, you know, the biggest myth, I think, as well, is this idea that our weight should stay stable 365 days a year. No, you know, our weight is not massively, not, you know, but our weight is supposed to fluctuate around, you know, when you go on holiday, when it's your birthday, when it's Christmas, you're supposed to gain a pound or two. But then it will fall back to where it's supposed to be once normal life resumes. It's absolutely normal. It's a normal part of life. But people freak out when the scales go up a pound or two. Oh, I'm doing something wrong. And so they start to then restrict, pull back, and that just erodes trust further and further and further.
Two brilliant points. Just on the second one, I like to think I'm very aware, you know, I'm in tune with my body, and I like to look at these kind of myths retrospectively and kind of experiment and just see how like outlandish they are. So I like to do little experiments. One night I weighed myself after a big meal, and then the following morning, so I don't know, let's say 10 hours later, I weighed myself. I lost 2 kilos, 4.5 pounds. And if I was in that diet mentality, I would be like, oh my goodness, I need to not, you know, one way or the other, you know, I can gain weight that quickly as well as lose weight that quickly. But I could be celebrating, and suddenly the next day when it goes back up, I would have been crying or something.
Exactly.
It's crazy how much your body can naturally just lose and gain weight. So a natural sort of few pounds here and there is very, very normal. Also on the calorie counting point, I can't remember what the exact stats are, but all the numbers that we read on packages and stuff, they have a tolerance of plus or minus like 30%, 40%.
About 25 to 30%. So basically that means that, you know, something that you believe to be, I don't know, kind of like 400 calories, it could actually be, and now I've put myself in the middle. So say something that
300 to 500.
Yeah.
Could be.
Yeah, exactly. So
it's crazy.
Yeah, it is absolutely crazy. And, you know, and the other thing you've got to bear in mind as well is that when we calculate calories, or when people, you know, when the food industry calculate calories, it does so using, you know, it doesn't use a human body to do that. It uses machinery, it uses a bomb calorimeter or whatever, which isn't exactly the same as the way that your body burns food. And I think, is it something like almonds or something like that? They say that almonds potentially have got like 30% less calories than what it says on the packaging as well, because of all the fiber, etc. And I think, it's just, you know, it's just not an exact science. Yes, thermodynamics is, but the other thing is that we are all, as you know, we're all very different genetically. We all, and also our gut microbiome, etc., is all very, you know, you could eat a banana and you could potentially get 75 calories out of it. I could eat a banana, and because the different makeup in my gut, I could get 100 calories out of it. Okay. So we are not, you know, it's just so arbitrary to think that, you know, counting calories. And very often people do. The other thing with counting calories is, you know, I think sometimes people do see, if it's the first time you ever counted calories, then sometimes you might see some quick wins, and that can become then quite obsessive. But actually over time, then what does it teach you? I get people that come to me and go, well, what do I do when I stop counting calories? And the other thing is that, you know, it can really lead to disordered eating. You know, I've got one friend, and I spoke about this recently, who she started some work with a PT, and he unexpectedly asked her to count calories. She said to me, she says, I panicked. She says, and, you know, I was supposed to be starting on the Monday. She goes, I binged all weekend. you know, because he was going to put me on calories. And then I spoke to her recently and she said, oh, I'm not eating with, you know, the kids tonight because I'm on my plan and I've got, you know, this. That's not normal. It's not okay. Why do we think that's okay? It's like I talk to people and it's like, oh yeah, I'm counting calories, or I've got to hit my 10,000 steps, or you know, I can't eat the same tonight because I've got to have my chicken rice and broccoli. Why is it okay? Why is it acceptable? Just like it's acceptable to call yourself, you know, to go, oh, I'm, you know, I feel, or, you know, I'm fat, I'm a pig, I'm X, Y, Z. That's not acceptable either. But it's almost like it's okay. We're living in a society where diet culture is so ingrained that is okay, but it's damaging. It's, you know, it puts so much stress and pressure on you that it, you know, it just has such a negative effect on your mental and your physical health. Not to mention, you know, the functioning, family functioning, you know, and the messages that you're probably passing on to your children. Anyway.
No, I love the passion. I love the energy and the passion that you have towards this. Is amazing. There's a couple of points I wanted to touch on. My background is in engineering, right? Mechanical engineering. So thermodynamics is, it's very, very logical. Yeah. Like my brain is 99% logical, whatever. Super logical. I love this equations and seeing calories in, calories out. To me, 10 years ago, 6 years ago, was perfect. I understand how my body works. Perfect. And thermodynamics is a real thing, and systems, you know, you can't just lose energy. Energy doesn't just go away. But having, you know, the experience that I now have, both on myself with clients, it's just not that simple. The human body is probably the most complex machinery in inverted commas that exists. It's just crazy.
We're all robots. It would be that straightforward. But we've got to forget, you know, we can't forget that, again, thermodynamics is real, but it applies, you know, everybody is different in terms of how they respond to the calories that they're eating. Food choices play a massive part, because your food choices will have a massive impact on your appetite, your satiety, etc. And then, you know, without all of that, you've then also got to remember that everybody approaches eating with a different background, different experiences, different beliefs, different, you know, we're all approaching it with different kind of, you know, paradigms. I keep saying this word paradigm, but we are, you know, we absolutely are. And that, you know, you cannot get away from that.
The phrase I like is the biopsychosocial perspective or something. So it's,
somebody mentioned that yesterday. I'm like, yeah, go on.
Yeah, food has a biological element, obviously, you know, how our body works, the nutrition, etc. There's a psychological mindset, I guess, paradigms is the word that you keep using, which I really like, element to it. And then the sort of social side of it, which we've touched on, you know, both of us with our sort of Italian heritage and stuff. And just focusing entirely on one can really disrupt.
Yeah, and I think that's that's a point I'd like to make as well about kind of, I did mention this kind of earlier, but, you know, you know, when I'm working with a client, I don't ever just, you know, work on them, like I said before. I look at the, you know, the multifunctional you know, of a person, the multidimensional functioning of a person, so to speak, because like you just said then there, you know, there's so many different facets that, you know, affect our health, and it's so important that we do pay attention to all of those, and so I do. Yeah.
Rebecca, if you could get the entire world population to do one thing every day, what would it be and why?
This one is easy. Okay. Obviously, as I've already said, we're all different. If I could get the whole world to do one thing every day, it would be one thing that makes them happy, one thing that makes them smile. And, you know, whatever that is, whether it's, you know, a cuddle with your children, whether it's a walk in the fresh air, whether it's eating a little bit of chocolate, whatever it is, you know, just one thing that makes you happy every day. Because, you know, I think that it has such a powerful impact on your mental health. And, you know, when you are happy, everything else falls into place.
Absolutely. And my standpoint to that is, if everyone did focus on doing something, at least one thing that made them happy every day, there would be much less turning to those, should we say, binge foods. Binge foods, that's a terrible phrase, but you know what I mean, like pieces. Say again?
I call them play foods or fun foods. Because they
Yeah.
have a part, they have a role to play in our life, Alex. You know, yes, there are foods that are more nutritionally valuable, you know, more nutrient dense, so foods that will give us more energy, etc. But, you know, the way I, sorry to interrupt, but the way I kind of look at it and the way I explain it to clients is, think about a child that's at school, all right? It's studying most of the day, but it has playtime. And in that playtime is when they develop, you know, emotionally, socially. It's time to unwind. It's time to have fun. You know, that's exactly how you should be thinking about, you know, fun foods, you know, foods, I guess, that are, you know, more, you know, more processed, more higher in calories, you know, the more highly palatable foods. They are what we call the fun foods, because they've got a very, very important part in your life. But, you know, we should be, for the most part, we should be focusing on the more nutrient dense, you know, the unprocessed stuff, the stuff that's going to make you feel good physically, all right? But then play food has a really, really important role that you should be including in your diet every day. But yeah, like you said, if you're managing your stress, if you're happy, you know, if you're focusing on one thing that makes you happy every day, like you said, it does then mean that those kind of, the foods, I guess, that you have been restricting or see as bad, which is what I help my clients to move away from, have less power over you, definitely. But, you know, as soon as you stop seeing foods as good and bad, they start suddenly just have less power over you anyway.
That's very powerful, really powerful. As soon as you stop labeling good and bad, because that's the binary all or nothing mentality, isn't it? That's not thinking on this continuum that we've discussed.
And it just causes stress. Because as soon as when you eat something good, you feel great, you feel, you know, you've got your halo shining. Then as soon as you eat something bad, you feel bad and you feel guilty and you feel stressed. So I always say to clients, don't think even, you know, that wonderful salad that you've just made, it's not good, it's tasty, it's crunchy, it's, you know, it's enjoyable, but it's not, you know, don't label it as good. Just like you shouldn't label that pizza, and I spoke about this, I'm going to post something later, but, you know, just like you don't label that pizza or that takeaway as bad. It was a yummy, delicious meal that, you know, you enjoyed.
I love that. Love that. I did a post maybe last week that got a bit of traction where I was talking about how I've started to drink a little bit more red wine than
I saw that post.
Yeah, than I have in the past. Basically, what I mean by that is every weekend now, me and my girlfriend will share a bottle of wine over Saturday and Sunday. So we'll have half a bottle on Saturday, half on Sunday. And it's not so much, you know, the focus isn't on the wine itself. It's the fact that, let's say 6 o'clock, 5 o'clock comes on Saturday, we put our laptops away, we stop working, we get out our favourite board games, we light a candle. We've got a nice woodwick one that kind of crackles as it burns. We've got Christmas. We maybe watch Disney film. Well, maybe watch the Disney films. I like to watch Lord of the Rings and sort of nerdy, geeky stuff. And it just, you know, it's that, obviously we're in lockdown, so there's limited things we can do. It's kind of like our date night, if you will. You know, where that wine and the food that we're having with it, it's not usually the most nutritious, the most but it plays that role in terms of that social emotional sort of satisfaction that I don't want to say we don't get earlier on the week, but it just really sort of emphasizes that over the weekend, which is so powerful.
Which is why I would never ever take anything away from clients. I always say to clients, they sometimes can't get their head around it. One of my clients last week, I said, you know, stop thinking about what you need to take away and think about what you need to be adding in. And he scoffed at me. I said, what? And he was like, well, you know, that's the last thing I'd expect you to say to me. Look at what you need to be adding, not taking away. And I'm like, look, you know, I'm not a Slimming World rep. You're paying me a decent amount of money to change your thinking, to change your nutrition habits. So let's look at, you know, the stuff that's missing in your diet and add that in and not take away that. You know, this client, wine is a massive part of his relationship with his wife. So I was never going to take that away. In fact, I've told him to stop thinking he's got to restrict it, because thinking that he's got to restrict it is just leading to him overindulging.
Such a brilliant point. Restriction is the worst mechanism for change. I think we both agree on that. There's an amazing thing that when you say, oh, let's start by adding stuff in, they're like,
yeah.
Really? You sure? Like,
and it's funny actually, because this client, sorry, just a bit of an anecdote, but this client did say to me, because I was like, okay, he says, you know, he was like, he believed he was addicted to muffins. Okay, that's a whole nother story, a whole nother conversation. Okay, and obviously I was like, well, I'm going to prove to you you're not. So he said, but anyway, we were talking about his snack time, and he said, you know, and I was like, okay, so what can you add? you know, instead of just having that muffin, what could you think about adding? So maybe you need to be thinking about adding some Greek yogurt, some, you know, some kind of protein, you know, maybe you could think about adding something to it. Anyway, he said to me, Rebecca, you tell me that, and all that's going to happen is that I'm going to eat the muffin, and I'm going to eat the yogurt, and I'm going to eat the fruit. So I'm going to end up eating like twice the amount of calories because you're, anyway, and I was like, oh, okay, all right, let's just see how, anyway, he came to the next session, he went, well, it didn't happen. He said, I didn't eat more. He said, I ate less. He said, and I just thought, you know, I gave it a little bit more thought to how I was constructed. And so it's like, and this is the other thing is that, you know, and again, I would never just, I kind of let it play out, if that makes sense. I love it though, when we have these conversations and clients are like telling themselves stories. They're like, no, that's not what I do. That's not the kind of person that I am. But obviously through coaching, you know, you're talking to a person's subconscious, aren't you? So they're absorbing things, and then it plays out in ways that they don't expect.
Amazing. Right, we are coming up on time. So before we end this wonderful episode, could you share where people can find you? And I believe you have a workshop coming up. Do you want to share a little bit more about that?
Yes, thanks, Alex. Yes, so I am doing a free webinar actually on the 9th of February. So if anybody is interested in learning a little bit more about me, and also, you know, I'm going to be sharing some, you know, really practical hints and tips to help people to really re-energize and, you know, get back in charge of their nutrition. And also one of my clients is going to be coming and she's going to be sharing her journey, so that, you know, I think that that's a great way of kind of making it come alive for people. So that's on the 9th of February. And yeah, if anyone wants to find me, they can find me. I'm really, really active on social media. So I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram. Not so good with Instagram, but wanting to work on that one. And I've got a website. So I'm regularly posting blogs on there, recipes on there. I do that quite a lot. So that is transformationalnutrition.co.uk. And I think my handle's on LinkedIn. I'm Rebecca Heald on LinkedIn, and then it's Transformational Nutrition 1 on Facebook and Instagram.
Perfect. And Rebecca Heald, that is Heald.
That's it, yeah.
Heald. Awesome. Thank you so much for spending your morning with me, Rebecca. This has been a lot of fun chatting.
You know,
I look forward to sharing this with everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alex. Thanks a lot.